Hello and welcome. My name is Natalie Areola, and today we will be exploring the Cutup method, made popular by counterculture icon William S. Burroughs. For those unfamiliar, the Cutup method is a creative technique in which you take pieces of text or images, cut them up, and randomly fit them back together. The resulting non sequitur mishmash serving as inspiration for new work. Today, I will be using text from several novels, a book on Zen Buddhism, and even a news report in my Cutup. I'm going to share one of the quotes with you now because I think the message is pertinent to the pursuit of the Cutup. And the main thing that happens from effective practice, it sounds even worse, is that you just get more and more disappointed with all the things you thought were going to make you happy. These things are fine, but our attachment to them loosens, and our need for them begins to weaken. Charlotte Jokobeck, Ordinary Wonder. This may be a difficult sentiment for some people. The thing is that when we take up creative practice, we often do so with a lot of expectations surrounding what we will get out of it. And one of the things we frequently expect from our creative endeavors is happiness. Some people might even demand happiness so vehemently that they would ask, what other reason is there to do anything at all? I believe that this expectation is precisely what drains the happiness out of our undertakings. And through this series on the Cutup technique, I hope to show that only when we let go of this insistence on outcomes, whether they be emotional, financial, social, or otherwise, do we truly experience the joy and wonder of making art. So how can the Cutup approach help us to understand the act of letting go in our creative practice? Let's find out in today's episode of the Cutup method. Now and then, I sometimes forget who I really am. I will be sitting in the kitchen or on the edge of the lounger by the pool, or here under the covers in my bed, and I lose all sense of myself. I forget what it is I do, the regular activity of my walk and my swim and my taking of tea, the minor trappings and doings of my days, what I've made up to be the token flags of my life. I forget why it is I do such things, why they give me interest or solace or pleasure. Chang Rei Li, Adjust Your Life. I begin my Cutup by collecting quotes from books on my shelf. Some of them I've read so many times the spines are broken and the pages tattered. Others I've never read at all. This time I enlisted the help of my husband, who collected quotes from a few of his favorite books to add to my own. After printing out the pages double-spaced, I set to the simple work of cutting them up. I have found it's best to cut them up into short phrases. Otherwise, the text becomes too indecipherable, and the Cutup so absurd as to lose all semblance of meaning. As I cut, I place the pieces of paper into my small gold bucket from the dollar store. When I'm finished and all the tidbits of paper are in the bucket, I do my best to scramble them before selecting my first phrase. Then I begin arranging the fragments piece by piece in the order I pulled them from the bucket on my construction paper and tape them down. The resulting text is sometimes poetic, sometimes nonsense, but I am typically able to glean some meaning from the unexpected arrangement of words and phrases, which become inspiration for a new photographic image. So I now have my Cutup completed, and I wanted to just go over the results with you. So let's just take a look at it here for a second. So I had a lot of little pieces of paper in my bucket. So this actually wound up being a front to back cut up. And I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because a lot of it is just kind of total gibberish, which is something to be expected with this method. However, there are definitely some tidbits here and there where meaning can be pulled from them. And you will also find that this is typically the case. So specifically, there are two lines that I think I'm going to use as inspiration for my image. So they are, in a landscape of the damned, there were two deaf mutes. So I like this because it provides a very vivid image, a landscape of the damned as a setting for our image. And I also like the idea of the two deaf mutes because I think that this can have either a literal or a symbolic meaning. So for my image, I'm going to give it kind of more of a symbolic sense. And that's what we're going to go with. Now, there are other things that I was able to pull out of this that were definitely interesting. And I actually wrote in my notebook a little poem sort of based upon what was in my Cutup. So I went through the Cutup and I just kind of rearranged things in a way that I felt lent a little more meaning to some of these phrases and just reordered them in that way. So that definitely gave me even further ideas. There's one image that I definitely really liked, and it actually came straight out of the Cutup, which is coming winter was like the glint of the cat's eyes. So I think that that is a very interesting metaphor and one that is just totally random and just came naturally out of this process. So another thing that I was considering as using as my inspiration was this little bit here of the poem that I wrote out. All the things you thought with half-closed eyelids of the individual's awareness, they would come out in attitudes of agony. So I think that that's really interesting, but maybe more in a literary sense. I think it would be kind of tricky to come up with an image idea for that, which is why I didn't wind up using that for our image inspiration. But there's all kinds of other things here. And if you do this, and I really recommend that you give it a try for yourself, you will find that there is always all kinds of inspiration that comes out of it, and that you can really go in a whole bunch of different directions with whatever it is that you're working on. But for our purposes, we are going to stick with, in a landscape of the damned, there were two deaf mutes. We are now set up and ready to shoot our image. So we already got our landscape of the damned. We went out to a park nearby the other day where there was a fire about a year ago, and there's still a lot of blackened trees. So we thought this would serve very nicely for a landscape of the damned. We went out there nice and early in the morning and got some very even light shots of that area. So I am also going to use a nice even lighting on Patrick. So for my lighting, I just have a single mono light. It's my Godox 60 watt light, and I have a 36-inch octabox on that, and I have it just right out in front of Patrick and also pushed pretty far back away from him so that we'll get a nice, even, soft light on him, and it will match the background that we're placing him into. Now, as far as the idea for the deaf mutes, I have picked up a robe at a Halloween store, so he's just going to be a black robed figure. And I'm going to have him hold this skull, which I've used in a few images before. And so the first shot, we're just going to have him holding the skull, and I'll kind of position him the way that I want him in the scene. And then for the second shot, I have a piece of bark that I think makes for kind of a cool mask. And it's just a natural object that I just picked up when we were camping at one point. And so I'm gonna have him just kind of hold that in front of his face, but in the actual image, I don't want him holding it. So we'll wind up compositing this together so that we'll have the figure with him holding the skull, and then it'll look like the mask is just, you know, something that he's actually wearing. And that's pretty much it. We just need those 2 shots and we'll be ready to take everything into Photoshop. So I think we're ready to go. Let's go ahead and take some shots here. Okay, Patrick. So will you turn the skull actually so that the head's facing inwards, or the face is facing inwards, if that makes sense? Yeah, that's perfect. And kind of tuck your thumb underneath if you can. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Okay, and turn your body a little bit more this way. Yeah, there we go, just like that. Okay, so I think I'm gonna actually focus on the skull since Patrick's face isn't going to be in this image. And we're really just gonna take a couple shots here. So 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to move this a little bit more this way. There we go, perfect. So I'm thinking that what I might do is duplicate the figure and then flip it. So I want the skull to face this way so that if I flip it that way, it will kind of like become one, if that makes any sense. So let's go ahead and get another shot. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so very easy. Now let's just go ahead and grab our bark. Take the skull and grab the bark. And you can put both hands or one hand underneath there, just whatever works best to support that. And we'll want to lift it up. Okay, I think that's good. You see here. Yeah, that's perfect actually. So let's hold that right there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's actually already just fine, but we'll do one more just for safety. Can you actually raise it up a little bit higher and to your right, just a tiny bit? Right there. Okay, right there. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that is perfect. So let me take that from you. And that's it. We have our images and we are ready to take it into Photoshop and see if we can build our landscape of the damned. Hiding in plain sight in a landscape of the damned were 2 deaf mutes. This is the haiku I wrote to accompany my image, which I'm calling 2 deaf mutes. I think I like it, but I'm not sure. It's a bit different from my usual style, but that's part of the point. The Cutup asks me to think about things in a different way than I'm accustomed to. And most importantly, it requires me to relinquish control over the outcome. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, we realize that we never have total control over the outcome of anything we do. We can certainly take actions which may steer us in a particular direction, but we cannot know what the future holds, and it rarely, if ever, reveals itself to us precisely as expected. And what a boring world it would be if we all knew exactly how every thought, action, and situation would unfold. Making an image in this way helps us to understand what Charlotte Jokobek means when she talks about becoming disappointed with all the things we thought would make us happy. She's not saying this to suggest that there is no way to be happy. She's saying it to show the fallacy in our understanding of what happiness is. Happiness is not the knowledge that this set of actions will lead to this specific result. Happiness comes to us when we embrace uncertainty. And then it isn't just happiness, which is nothing more than a passing feeling. It is joy. Joy which is always tinged with sadness, joy which comes from surrender, joy which marvels at the beauty in the darkness and the light. When we practice creativity in this way, we realize that all that longing for creative satisfaction was holding us back from experiencing the wonder in the act itself, and that all the stress of those wants and desires fall away in the face of what is. Thank you for joining me in this exploration. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss out on future episodes of the Cutup method.